In recent weeks, Formula One has turned into a kind of traveling courtroom. It doesn't matter what race, what circuit, what strategy, the result was always the same: an angry driver, a frustrated team principal, and fans left with the feeling that nobody really understood what was allowed and what wasn't. And just when it seemed everything would stay in this loop of public arguments, the bomb dropped in Qatar. The big meeting between the FIA and the drivers finally happened. But there's a detail people underestimated: this wasn't one of those polite, scripted meetings full of generic phrases. It was a confrontation. The drivers walked in loaded videos, arguments, months of accumulated frustration. And for the first time in a long time, the FIA listened. They acknowledged issues. They admitted the current guidelines aren't keeping up with what actually happens on track. What makes the whole thing even stranger is the timing. Formula One is more confused than ever: identical incidents treated differently, penalties based on text that doesn't always match the physics of the car, and teams trying to guess what the stewards will decide. The meeting felt like a distress signal. And at the same time, a sign that something big is about to shift. And if you think this is just talk, wait until you understand the scale of the change being quietly prepared behind the scenes. Because what happened in Qatar shakes the present, but above all, the future of the sport. Before we dive further, hit like and subscribe. That's the only way this kind of deep, independent analysis survives the algorithm. What was on the table in Qatar wasn't just a review of 5 controversial incidents. It was a debate about how Formula One should be judged from now on. The drivers walked in with a simple, sharp question. How can you apply rigid, mechanical rules to a sport built on nuance? They pointed to recent decisions that, even when following the written guidelines, made zero sense to someone actually driving the car. Sainz, for example, brought up a point that annoys nearly everyone on the grid: it makes no sense to turn racing into a hunt for the perfect position on the asphalt, just to fit a paragraph, especially when that doesn't match natural racecraft. The guidelines turned into a bureaucratic manual. And the FIA knows it. Their own numbers confirm it: the document has been updated several times and still can't predict new situations. On track, every corner became a gray zone. The meeting turned into a festival of examples: Zandvoort, Monza, Aston, Mexico, Interlagos. Some decisions were defended. Others left the room silent. This is where the tension rose. Because the drivers weren't asking for tweaks. They were asking to flip the table over. The first phase of the meeting was a kind of year-in review. 5 key incidents were dissected. In Zandvoort, the Sainz vs. Lawson clash showed how a guideline can completely ignore real-world car behavior. The text said Sainz had no right to space because he was on the outside. But the footage revealed Lawson briefly lost control. The penalty was reversed later, and that enraged the drivers. How can a decision taken in minutes ignore something so basic? In Monza, Sainz and Behrman brought the opposite type of case. The text said Sainz was right, and only because of that, Behrman was penalized. Even in what looked like shared responsibility. In Aston, Norris had to drive the rest of the race knowing that any tiny mistake could punish him, even after being forced wide. In Interlagos, Piastri got 10 seconds for an incident most drivers saw as 50-50. And in Mexico, the debate became, who gains advantage off track? And how long should that advantage be measured? The drivers highlighted an uncomfortable truth: the guideline can't capture intention. And intention is everything in racing. If a driver locks up while trying to avoid contact, is he guilty? If the car slides on a natural incline of the track, is that a mistake or physics? To them, the document became a distorted lens. It helps in simple cases, but it collapses when nuance appears. Formula One is being treated like a video game with absolute rules. But real cars don't behave that way. Before we move on, I need to ask you something important. If you like deep dives like this, real investigations, political analysis, what happens in the shadows of Formula One, then make sure you subscribe. This channel doesn't chase headlines, it explains what's really happening long before it reaches the mainstream. So hit subscribe, drop a like, and stay with us. Because what comes next digs even deeper into the story. After going incident by incident, the drivers changed the tone. The room got heavier. Now they weren't talking about mistakes, they were talking about the system. They pressed 3 key points. First, the guideline can't predict everything. The FIA admitted it. The document cannot cover every scenario. It's impossible. Racing is inherently unpredictable. That opened the door for the key phrase of the meeting. We need people who understand racing, not just written text. Second, stewards vary too much. Every weekend has a different panel. Different experiences. Different tolerance levels. Different interpretations. F1 became a hostage of whoever happens to be on duty. And third, ex-drivers interpret incidents better than current stewards. Sainz named names: Karun Chandhok, Jolyon Palmer, Anthony Davidson. People who not only raced but analyze races today in a clear, technical way. Drivers and teams agree, these guys interpret racecraft far better than the official system. This is when the Real bomb formed. The drivers want a radical shift, a permanent panel of specialists and former drivers to judge racing, not rotating stewards. And the FIA didn't reject it. They said something closer to, maybe it's time. Here lies the most ironic twist. Because the drivers themselves were the ones who asked for guidelines back in 2022. They wanted clarity. They wanted predictability. 3 years later, the very system they asked for became their biggest enemy. Now, they're asking to tear down what they built. The FIA, pressured by public frustration and a shrinking level of trust, knows its credibility is on the line. Either they change, or the 2026 season, with new cars, new rules, and aggressive racing, will explode into chaos. This isn't just a technical debate. It's a philosophical one. No elite sport uses rotating referees and rigid texts to interpret dynamic action. Football has professional refs. Basketball has stable crews and adaptable guidelines. And Formula One is still using a 1990s arbitration model to judge cars that hit 300 km/h in seconds. Changing this isn't cosmetic. It's a structural shift. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't a normal F1 channel. Here we break down the stories no one else touches, the power games, the quiet moves, the real forces shaping the grid. So make sure you're subscribed and leave a like. Your support keeps these investigations alive and brings the next chapters straight to you the moment they unfold. The meeting in Qatar didn't change anything immediately. Nothing will be different for the last races of the year. But that's only the surface. Underneath it, something huge is moving. The FIA admitted the guidelines don't cover everything. They admitted they need more experienced judgment. And behind closed doors, they admitted the drivers' request permanent stewards, specialists, ex-drivers, may actually be implemented after the season. This is where the earthquake begins. This is the part the public hasn't fully grasped. The drivers want to destroy the system they helped create. And the FIA might agree. It's as if the whole category is saying, the current model failed. And that raises the inevitable question. If the system is broken, who guarantees that 2026, with new cars and even more intense wheel-to-wheel fights, will be judged fairly? There's no answer yet. But one thing is certain, Formula One is about to enter an era where officiating becomes as decisive as aerodynamics. And if this change really happens, F1 will finally be judged by people who truly understand racing. If you want to follow this shift as it happens, leave a like and help the channel grow. This story is only getting started.